Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about truth. Now, that doesn't seem very political at first, but then think about the concept of fake news. Doesn't that kind of get you riled up, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on? Because nobody who's seeking truth wants to believe in fake news. It's just these days, it's hard to know what is and what isn't fake news. Right now, it's being used by the president to make us not trust our media organizations. And the thing that's so dangerous about that is it allows the uber wealthy and powerful to get away with some terrible things simply because they know that the truth is not going to come to light, or that their supporters won't believe the truth. And that's what really matters, because we work in this electoral system where you need to keep your voters, and you don't necessarily have to reach out to Americans as a whole, because we're not working in a system where the popular vote wins the presidency. So it kind of encourages people to only appeal to certain people and be able to take advantage of other people. Something that I hear people say is, how in the world did people in Germany allow things to get as bad as they did? You know, how can you have concentration camps in your country and not stand up and go, hey, this is a problem? And that is because Hitler was very intelligent in understanding how important the press is to shaping national beliefs. He was able to convince people as a whole that the media is not to be trusted. So then when the media can't be trusted, the only person that you're left with to believe in is the figure that the media should be reporting on. So it makes people get super obsessed with believing and moving politically in lockstep with the person that you have decided to support. So there are many different things that we can use to figure out what the truth is in media, but it takes work. You're not going to sit in front of a television and become truly informed. It's unfortunate. I wish that wasn't the case, but if you sit and watch television, you're not going to get the full picture. So what you're going to have to do is go on the internet and do a search. Now, if you find a political commentary video that you really, really like, you should ask yourself several things to figure out if this is somebody that you can really truly believe in. One of the easiest ways, one of the best indicators is, do they agree with scientists? Science has a set of rules that make it easier to delineate what is truth and what is not. For something to be considered truthful, it has to have been studied. The results of the study need to be replicated, and that allows you to depend on more people to tell you the truth. Because the more voices that you're hearing from, the more informed you can be. Reading peer-reviewed articles, the articles that might have been considered boring in school, that can be really, really helpful. Looking at history, which I hated history when I was in school. And now I realize we have a lot of issues going on, and the roots of those issues are in history. But if we refuse to look at history to figure out what the root of these problems are, we can't actually address the problems. So history can also be helpful to understand the present, and it's something that we really overlook in our education. Another thing that could be a bit of a warning sign to you is if you are listening to a news channel and they constantly appeal to your emotions, to be afraid, to feel like someone is coming to get you, to feel like there's a group of people, the others, that you are continually against. Those are warning signals that you are being emotionally manipulated to believe certain things. The best way to spread disinformation is to have it come in a very emotional package. When people get really, really emotional, they lose a certain part of their critical thinking. Now, with the way things are, you really can't consume news without being frightened and upset and all these other things. So it's become a little bit more difficult. Just because something does rile you up doesn't mean it's automatically incorrect. But if your news station constantly just tries to drum up fear, and doesn't use data, references to scientific journals, or different experts in these fields, then you're not getting the full picture. It's difficult for, I think, a lot of Republicans, and I really sympathize with the difficulty that you have these days because so much media is perceived to have a very liberal bias. And I think we get so caught up in fighting over social issues that we just allow these politicians to economically just railroad us. So because you might believe that there's not newspaper articles to support your political leanings, it's much easier to pick one political person and follow them and just trust them and blindly hand over that trust. But if you are consuming media and that media never criticizes a certain politician, then that's a red flag. Or if you're watching media and they always side with one political party, that's also a red flag. If you're watching media and they are basing who they criticize off of the opinions of one person, for example, if the president is angry at a specific Republican and that's the only Republican that is criticized by that media, that's a red flag. Because there is no politician that is perfect. I've made no secret of the fact that I think that Bernie Sanders is a great politician because I believe that he's one of the few that really consistently tells the truth of his ideals and is fighting for the same things he's talking about. Now, you might not think those things are great, and that's a very fair point of view. I feel like he is truthful, and that appeals to me. But I also know that his history on gun control is actually not as progressive as I would like it to be. But instead of denying that fact, I can go, okay, that is part of him that I don't necessarily approve of. And he has kind of changed his opinion on that over the years. And I think it did start with the fact that Vermont, there's a lot of hunting in that state, and I think that he really wanted to preserve that. But I look at it, I don't feel like, oh my God, this guy that I like, I just found out something that I don't like, oh my God, it's personal. Because you cannot take media personally and be informed. And that's hard because you're gonna be passionate about it no matter what, because right now things are crazy. Passion is built into the crises that we're facing. So it really is such a fine line to have to walk as a consumer. But say you notice a red flag, like a media outlet is just saying that a certain politician can do no wrong. So that's a red flag. So the next step is I'm going to look it up on the internet. And whether you use Google or DuckDuckGo, you're still going to have different websites that come up on that topic. And when it comes to the major media conglomerates, yes, their biggest sin, I think, some of them do, just straight up lie, but their biggest sin, I think, is really omitting certain things or having complete silence about certain topics. And that actually misleads the audience because they think they're getting the full picture when they're not. There are ways to see if what you're consuming is accurate. When there is a fact that is contested, check them both out. If one of them has peer-reviewed articles, has talked to experts, and the other one has a lot of inflammatory language but doesn't have those building blocks that indicate that it is something that is widely perceived to be truthful, then you're looking at something that needs better sources to back it up. So you can then go find it. Because these media conglomerates are in competition, if one says something that's dishonest, the other ones are going to call him out. So even if you don't trust the Washington Post because, it's owned by, a single person that you might doubt. I mean, I'm not crazy about the fact that it's owned by Jeff Bezos, but that doesn't mean that I think that I cannot trust a single thing that they put out. Because in order for them to keep their viewership, they are going to want to appeal to the largest audience that they can. And if they are called out by their competitors for printing falsehood, that's going to hurt their bottom line. So even though you might not trust everything that a certain outlet puts out there, you can use the major outlets who are going to call each other out on things to kind of get an idea of, is this fact? Is this widely agreed upon? Or is this something that you're only finding on one station? Or is this something that you're really only finding from one person? Because the fact of the matter is, these days, everything looks legitimate. Facebook is a great example. Tons of people get their news on Facebook. And we actually know that Russians purposefully put disinformation on Facebook to try and sway the election. We know that from the FBI. We also know that the FBI is warning us that if we are not careful about the information that we pass on, we can become part of this misinformation problem. So if you find something on Facebook, you cannot call that truth without having other sources that also agree. Facebook is very, very lax on what they allow to be advertised. I hear a lot of people talking about how it's ridiculous that people are mad at Facebook for not controlling what is truthful in political ads. And the reason why people want there to be more accountability is not so that Facebook pages are just shut down because their speech is not agreed upon, but it's actually, are you going to take the money from somebody who has demonstrable lies in their advertisement and you're going to run that advertisement? And that is very, very different from just silencing somebody and not letting them be on Facebook at all. This taking money from politicians without being willing to say, no, I'm not going to let a commercial that person is paying for play on my site when I know that it has information that is demonstrably incorrect. Because a lot of times, even if there's disagreements on what is fact, you can find adjacent facts, and these are very different from alternate facts. And what I mean by adjacent facts are there other facts that are agreed, like, for example, Trump is saying that he always wants to protect those with pre-existing conditions, but at the same time, he is in the courts fighting against that. And that is something that is very easy to verify because you can look up the actual, the court process that's going on. It is public record. Freedom of Information Act requests can be very, very helpful. We also see that there are a lot of things that are declassified after a period of time. So we can look at the declassified things that the government has been involved in and realize that those can be clues to what it is that the government is trying to do. A great example of how the internet can be used comes when you look at the declassified files where they discuss MK Ultra. And we can see the declassified document showing that there was a solid attempt to try and be able to hypnotize people and control what they do, etc., etc., etc. So we can see that that is true, but it's really brilliant. What they did is they kind of flooded the internet with information and with people who had these crazy conspiracies. Suddenly, when people see MK Ultra, they're like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory, simply because they have seen that, that there's so much junk information that is making it look illegitimate to mention that MK Ultra was indeed something that the CIA was involved in. So we know that information can be used strategically to muddy the waters and to obscure truth. So in order to go without 100% trusting one media organization, we also have to look at who is it that is paying the bills? Who are the advertisers? Who is funding it? If you see a media organization that runs something that all the other major organizations seem to disagree with, let's learn more about the people who are actually running that media organization, that started that media organization. Roger Ailes, who started Fox News, he has a very, very interesting background, and a lot of it really is PR. We know that the government has tried to be involved in media to be able to put out their own stories. And now we have these reporters who, with the advent of the internet and it blowing up so much, they have to write several little articles every day. And the people who are really, following one article and really digging into it and discovering the truth, they are benefiting less than the people who will accept a pre-written piece from a politician and then just publish it themselves and meet these requirements that reporters are now being asked to meet, such as you have to write 2 different articles every day in addition to, for the online portion, in addition to everything else. Plus, if a media organization has an article or an expose on a piece before the other media organizations do, then they make more money because they get more traffic, because they have that information, which also encourages jumping the gun. It encourages media organizations to get that information out there before they've verified every part of the story. And even when media organizations publish corrections, a lot of people who saw the original article aren't even going to see the correction. So before you go passing along information as fact, it's going to take work. And over time, there are certain people that I have grown to trust who deliver news, but I still don't have a single person that I go to, and if they say something, it's law. If we are so obsessed with our political party, and we have people right now who are rioting, we have people who are on standby to do violence, and these people, they believe that they are doing something based on the truth, but they're not taking the time to be certain of that. It's not comfortable to check yourself because a lot of media stories, especially the ones at the very top of your search, might be completely cherry-picked to be things that you'll enjoy and that you'll like. And these things that you will enjoy might not be the things that are the most truthful. So it is impossible to be informed and not be willing to say, there's a politician that I thought was pretty cool, but you know what? They're not. It's interesting to me that the president will still not go right out and say, guys, it's patriotic to wear a mask. You should wear it all the time. That's the only way that we really can stay open. If you guys don't wear masks, then it's going to make this problem so much larger that we're going to be forced to close down. And Trump is not willing to say, I have more information and I've changed my mind, even though whether it's actually the way he believes is a whole nother thing, you know, because people lie. And you have to accept that people lie and you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.